Good afternoon, everybody. Agnieszka Ostrowska, Center for International Relations. I would like to welcome you to our seventh session, skill building session on this time integration of Ukraine into the European Union. This session is going to be led by the Slovak team. Unfortunately, our Slovak partner, Alexia Bazarab, who is with us, she lost her voice. She's ill, so I will be her voice right now. And I have a great pleasure to introduce our speakers. Mr. Martin Klus, who is a Slovak academic, commentator, and politician, who will be speaking first. And unfortunately, due to his other obligations, he will not be able to stay with us. Our next speaker will be Sergei Gerasimuk from the Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian priest, who will devote all of the time and insights that he has. And last but not least, Mr. Rostislav Pavlenko, an Ukrainian political scientist and analyst and politician, who will be joining us shortly. He's on his way. And today we will talk about joint opportunities that are available now for integration of Ukraine into the European Union and cooperation with this country. And also we will tackle the role of organizations of civil society, such as think tanks like ours and NGOs like other organizations that are in the project. And we will try to look at the things, exploring views from Slovakia and Ukraine. So before I give the floor to our first speaker, Martin Klus, I would like to remind you that our project, NGO Community Building International Bridges, is co-financed with International Visegrad Fund. So, Mr. Klus, I will be happy to give the floor to you, and we are waiting to your intervention.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I hope connection is okay and you can hear me and see me well. Just to maybe add a couple of words about my background. I used to be Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Slovak Republic during 2019-2020, and then 2020-22. I was a State Secretary for European Affairs, so directly dealing also with an enlargement issue and so-called General Affairs Council Minister. So I was part of many discussions about Ukrainian future in the European Union. And I'm very proud to say that Slovakia always been a very big supporter of Ukraine as a European member state, first, of course, as a candidate country, then to start negotiation process and hopefully soon to be a member state of the European Union. It's critically important for all of us in this part of the Europe because enlargement of the European Union is first and foremost a security issue. We all believe that as we remember, European Union started as a peace project, and we all believe that having Ukraine and, of course, Western Balkan countries and Moldova in the European Union is in our security importance because as we can see, it is also very interesting to follow how third countries are influencing, especially candidate countries now, and Moldova, Ukraine, and Western Balkan countries are of course heavily affected by this influence. That's why enlargement must be depoliticized process and must take place as soon as it gets. I believe this will be the most important task for the next European Commission, because last two commissions didn't deal with enlargement issue, and if so, not very successful way, as we can follow in Western Balkan countries. And that's why it is critically important to prepare this project of enlargement by the next Commission, and hopefully welcome first countries, especially from Western Balkan. I mean, Montenegro, and hopefully also Albania, North Macedonia, and Serbia soon. And of course, in the same time, we have to finalize negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. Hopefully also Georgia, but the process with Georgia is, as you can following, the situation in Georgia a little more complicated now. So as I said, it's a security issue first and foremost, but not only. It's a question of our living standard in Europe, because I'm always saying to Slovakians who are not supporters of enlargement of the European Union that look how it was important for Slovakia and many other countries that enlargement help us to change our living standard. And if you take a look, for instance, to the regions of Eastern Austria or Germany, which used to be one of the poorest part of Europe during the Cold War period, now they are one of the most richest part of the Europe, because enlargement helped a lot also to develop these regions. So this is how we are trying to persuade also Slovaks, especially in eastern part of Slovakia, that if Ukraine will be member state of the European Union, this will be a win-win situation for all of us, and will help a lot also to the eastern part of Slovakia, and to change living standard, not only for Ukrainians in Ukraine, but also for Slovaks living in this part of Slovakia. The same for Poland, the same for Hungary, the same for Romania, and many other countries who are now neighbor countries of non-EU members. So this is another important topic to speak about. And of course, we are facing a critically tough situation that we are all heavily affected by the Russian propaganda all around the European Union, which is trying to speak about enlargement as a problematic topic, which will bring more troubles to European Union. But this is why it is inevitable that we will also prepare a good communication strategy about the enlargement of the European Union. And during the next European Commission, we will try our best that this topic will be among the most vocal. And this topic, as I said, will be depoliticized, and it will be supported by not only Commission, but also member states as much as it gets. You mentioned a critical role of NGOs in this process. I fully agree with you. Actually, this discussion is one of the examples why it is important, because it is inevitable that we will share our experiences, not only from the negotiation process, from countries who joined the European Union 20 years ago, or 17 years ago, or 11 years ago, like Croatia. But it is also important that functional civic society is the backbone of democracy in all European Union member states. So this is why we need functional NGOs, which will help us to promote also the idea of the enlargement. And I'm very grateful for everything you are doing in this topic, and I'm very grateful to every NGO all around the European Union who are active in this topic, because as I said at the very beginning, it's a win-win situation for all of us to have a smooth and quick enlargement process, to make sure that countries like Russia, China, Turkey, even Saudi Arabia, and many others are not influencing European Union from outside the way, which is of course not in our favor. So this is why I believe we need we need enlargement as a tool, and we need a European Commission which will be active in this topic as much as it gets. So maybe this should be the first part of my intervention, and I will be very happy to hear your opinions or your questions, and I'm ready, of course, to answer them as much as it gets. Thank you.
Would anyone like to use this opportunity to address a question to Mr. Plus or to share his comments and insights with him? I will have a question for you, Mr. Klaas. The next question, because we are talking today about joint opportunities of cooperation, and I was thinking that maybe you could give us some very practical examples of cooperation. What could the cooperation be between organizations like ours? The organizations that we have on board the project are usually small or medium-sized NGOs. Quite often, the most of them is involved in the help of Ukrainian refugees or migrants as such to their countries, and maybe some very, very practical hints, because we are all practitioners here, and we would like to maybe know what could change and where to look for the opportunities to cooperate.
Thank you for this question. It's very important, and I'm sure that there are many opportunities for organization like yours. I guess people love stories, and I guess one of the main problems, if it comes to the enlargement of the European Union, is that people are afraid. They are simply afraid that because of the enlargement, many migrants will come to Europe, European Union countries, and they will lose their jobs. Let's not forget, for instance, Polish plumber topic during the French or Dutch referendum about the European Constitution. Let's not forget British Brexit, which was also very much about migrants at the British territory, especially coming from Poland, but not only. So this is why we have to be very frank, and we have to be very vocal about for instance, migration, if it comes to the enlargement, and to speak about stories, how migrants help to their host countries. And for instance, I'm using a very interesting example, which I believe you have to be vocal about, is that let's take a look on 24th February 2022, when the full-scale invasion of Russia started, and European countries simply opened their borders and were able to accommodate millions of refugees coming from Ukraine without any troubles. So why to be afraid of enlargement if this was possible in just couple of days and couple of weeks, and it has no negative effect on the labor market at all. Of course, there were some topics heavily abused by the radicals, for instance, about how Ukrainians are taking places in kindergartens for our kids and stuff like this. But of course, we will always find people like that. But let's use positive examples, how we were able to accommodate millions of Ukrainians, and not only, also hundreds of thousands of Serbians and Romanians before, during the enlargement process. And we can't imagine our labor market now without these people. So this is why we have to speak opposite way to the radicals about the stories of people coming to our territories and help a lot to not only our labor market, but also help our countries to understand better what is happening in their homelands. So I'm sure that an organization like yours could share such stories and could help people in Poland, Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, many more countries, even Western European Union countries, to understand why it is important to enlarge European Union as soon as it gets, and how this could be helpful to their everyday life. And this is one of the best things NGOs all around the European Union could do. And you can find also interesting sources for that. You mentioned at the very beginning that also this discussion is co-funded by the Visegrad Fund, but it's not only fund. I know that could be used for such activities, and I'm sure you know some of other possibilities too. And let's use them as much as it gets, as soon as it gets, because we need public support for enlargement.
You couldn't agree more. Thank you for that. And yes, this is something also what we feel in the Polish market, like the need for immigrants from Ukraine and the loss of some resources when Ukrainian men returned to the front, returned to their countries. So at some point we started to be helpless without having them here. And that's a great point that you made about this power of stories and for powerful stories. Unfortunately, pro-Kremlin propaganda is trying to kind of distort the picture. But fortunately, we are quite, let's hope, cautious society, and also with the help of organizations like ours, we will work upon our society to also believe in the stories which are not distorted. I would like to ask Mr. Gerasimov, because you have lifted your hand, what would you like to add to this discussion?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have a couple of questions to Mr. Klus, and two of them are related to our conversation, and the third one is a technical one, but also important for me, sort of. First, if currently our organization, Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism, is implementing the project which is named Ukrainian Activeness in the Time of War. And the objective of the project is to study if it is indeed Ukraine who holds the agency in the process of European integration. We need these arguments to fight speculation about the fact that Ukraine is guided by the West, the speculations which are widely spread by Russian Federation. And in this regard, I have two questions. The first one is related to the Slovak actorness. Did you feel like an actor as a country during the process of European integration, or the European agency and actorness prevailed and the process of integration was mostly guided by the EU? The second question is a technical one. Can I interview you this week or the next week regarding this question in detail? And the third question is related to think tanks and NGOs. There are a couple of coalitions which are active in the region. If you follow the NGO activities, then probably you are aware of the Black Sea NGO Forum, which is quite a big event, annual event, which is supported by the Black Sea Trust and German Marshall Foundation and regularly organized in Bucharest. There is also a newly established network of academia and think tanks within the Lublin Triangle, which was established just a year ago, and the respective declaration was signed in Lublin, which is symbolic enough. And there is a coalition within V4 countries, so-called Think Visegrad Network, which is co-sponsored by the Visegrad Foundation. And as far as I'm concerned, some of the Ukrainian think tanks raised the question about joining the Think Visegrad coalition, although there is no response yet. What is your opinion regarding such an opportunity? Will it bring any added value? And can Ukrainian think tanks somehow contribute into the already developed network of Think Visegrad?
Thank you very much for all the questions. And I will start with the second one. Yes, of course, it will be my pleasure. Please reach me by my email. First one, yes, of course, every country, including Slovakia, is an important actor if it comes to the enlargement process. We were very vocal to start negotiation with Ukraine and Moldova. We were also active if it comes to the Bosnia for the candidacy status. And as you can see, every country could quite actively block process of enlargement too. So we were very much trying to fight against such activities. Let's not forget what has happened with North Macedonia a couple of times. We are, of course, following the situation in Hungarian Ukrainian relationship, which is also not very pleasant. And we tried our best to serve as a bridge in this topics and to help these countries to unblock the processes. And Slovakia is now having quite an important discussion with Germany and Slovenia if it comes to the support of their activity, that it will not be possible to use veto during the enlargement process of any particular country at the very beginning of the process. We only need unanimity at the end of the process. If this will come true, then the enlargement process will speed up, and I'm sure it will help to all of us. So this is also activity of Slovenia, Slovakia, Germany, and some other countries. I'm not unfortunately involved to this anymore, as long as I already finished my political career, but I'm trying to influence that through my activities in Globsec, where I'm senior fellow and where I'm helping with this enlargement topic also through this channel. So maybe this could be an answer for the first question. And the third question, yes, of course, all of these activities you mentioned are very, very important. And this is why I believe every resource you can find to use for these activities is very important. I remember during Slovak presidency in Visegrad that we tried to focus on these activities, and the problem of Visegrad Fund and some other funds coming from European Union or Norwegian fund, for instance, is that only Slovak NGOs could apply for that, or only Visegrad NGOs could apply for that. So it's good that some of your NGOs are situated in Poland or Slovakia or Hungary or Czechia, and this is the way how to apply for some Visegrad money, for instance. So I fully advise to all of you to have sometimes even 2 or 3 addresses to make sure that you are eligible to apply for some funds all around Europe, including regional funding. This is the advantage of bigger NGOs who are having their headquarters not only in one member state, but in more member states. And if situation is allowing you to do so, please do so, and use as much funding as possible. Also in different countries, because it's not only public funding, it's also sometimes private funding which is available. And I'm sure for this topic we need as much sources as possible.
And if I may add, this is not only about Ukrainian organizations and NGOs that have established their offices in other countries, but also International Visegrad Fund is funding projects comprising Ukrainian organizations that are based in Ukraine. So it does not necessarily have to mean that the organizations have to, I don't know, be big enough to multiply their offices, but the opportunities are bigger and bigger. And I would like to use this opportunity to tell you that we are just finalizing our chatbot within the framework that we are producing in the framework of this project, and we will promote different competitions, different possibilities for your the easiness of your reach. You will be able to use it, I guess, in 2 weeks' time, and there are opportunities also for small organizations which are based in Ukraine and other countries. So we are talking about the opportunities for Ukraine right now. And another thing that I would like to just add is that this is concerns maybe your question, Mr. Gerasimov, that it is not always that Ukrainian NGOs have to learn something from us. We have seen that during execution of other projects, for instance, devoted to disinformation. We did a big project a couple of years ago with Stop Fake Ukrainian NGO, thanks to whom we actually managed to understand how propaganda works, because this is you who has been like the most affected with it. And there are a lot of practices, good practices coming from your side. So I would like to stress this idea that this is not like that we are teaching and you are profiting, but we are quite often partners in execution of common projects, and we also learn from you. So this is something very, very important to stress.
Thank you so much, Agnieszka, for this comment. And first, let me tell you that I have sort of a very long experience of cooperation with your center. Unfortunately, it is sort of forgotten, but back when Mr. Eugeniusz Smolar was the director, I guess, at the beginning of 2000 something, I've been already involved in the project of CSM. And another point is that you mentioned, let me use this opportunity for sort of self-advertising. We just launched a new project, which is called CEE-VAT. It's Central European Vulnerability Alert Tracker. This project is supported by the Weltstiftung in Ukraine, and the project is aimed at focusing on the Russian hybrid threats and Russian hybrid instruments used in the region. And Ukraine suffered a lot from these instruments, and the toolkit is almost the same, and therefore the countries in focus for us will be Romania, Moldova, Slovakia, and Poland, the countries which face not only the European elections, but also faced recent elections. And in case of Poland, you'll have presidential elections next year. You just passed through the local elections. In Romania, it's a full cycle of elections. In Moldova, it's presidential elections. And in Slovakia, it's just recent presidential elections. So I will be in touch with you regarding these issues. And I guess it can be another opportunity for the exchange of experience, because we have sort of record of fighting Russian propaganda, and we can share it. And our military guys, personal experts will be involved in. And I guess it can be another bridge that we build together between the countries of the region, which I believe is another accelerator of the European integration of Ukraine.
Yeah, we would be very happy. We would be very happy to come back to cooperation, and also not only on institutional, but on a higher level. We have a request from one of our participants. If you could text the name of your tracker, please. You could use the chat, if you may, Mr. Gerasimov. And because Mr. Klus, I think, will be going soon, I would like to refer to the question that Olesia has asked. So, Mr. Klus, if you could answer this question, what are your thoughts on development Slovak position, taking into account that NGO here are very active and they try to influence the situation, as with initiative on munition?
Thank you, Olesia, for this wonderful question. Yes, I'm very proud of many Slovak citizens which are substituting our government who decide not to help buy munition anymore, different than the commercial base, but Slovak citizens help with wonderful donation to Czech initiative, actually, to help Ukrainians with the munition. So this is one of the wonderful examples how it works and how NGOs are active in Slovakia. And this is why I believe Slovak civil society is much stronger than our politicians, and especially ruling politicians, now believe. And this is a good news for all of us. Let's hope it will remain like this. And I know that many of members of parliament, especially coalition members of parliament, now believe that we have to have a weaker civil society in Slovakia, especially the one which is dealing with the political issues. But let's fight hard and let's remain strong in this case. And hopefully also with your help and your expertise and good practices you are sharing within this network, we can survive this. And let's hope Slovakia will remain strong supporter of Ukraine if it comes to enlargement of the European Union, and if it comes to all the important negotiation processes of Ukraine coming to European Union. So thanks once again for invitation. I will be happy to continue with this discussion in some of the next sessions. Sorry for not staying longer with you, but hopefully we will meet soon again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klus. We are very happy that you managed to join, but fortunately now we have a replacement, because I can see that Mr. Roslav Pavlenko is with us. So just you will shift to the places. And thank you for your input. And Mr. Pavlenko, I would like to welcome you, and maybe you could just introduce yourself very briefly and maybe tell us your comments or, I don't know, insights to the topic.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this invitation and the opportunity to join this discussion. In a way, I'm wearing two hats, because on the one hand, my expertise is from the civil society, from the academia, and I also worked in a think tank, and through think tank, through political consultations, also joined the other side, and I'm now a politician and a member of Ukrainian Parliament for the European Solidarity faction. And in those two actually roles, I would like maybe to make some comments, and we'll gladly answer questions if any would come. So I, first of all, sorry for being a bit late. It's quite hectic around here. And from what I managed to hear, it is a very good experience of having all the friends on board. And thank you very much for all that the societies of your countries do for our country. It's really a friend in need, and we do feel it, and we do need it. So thank you for this. And actually, speaking of probably developing the situation, first and foremost, Ukraine is now where all of you have been. We are actually approaching the stage of direct negotiations, the EU membership negotiations. Opening chapters, as you well remember, is a very tricky issue. And now we actually coming to this. If nothing changes and no bad luck enters, we do it before Hungary takes presidency of the European Union, hopefully, at least, you know, to set the process in June this year. But we regard the process as a way of the agenda setting, because even with the war, we see European integration is a way to enhance our efficiency. And, you know, little authoritarian regime will never win a war over a big authoritarian regime, which Russia is. But only democracy can prevail due to its actual advantages of all the things of willing full mobilization and knowing the case, and of course having the relations with the allies. So given this, I would see that the civil society community and think tank community native to me is also a very important component. It's not only just, you know, general saying. We had an experience of having an institutional leverage for this. When Ukraine signed the association agreement with the European Union back in 2014. Inside the agreement, there was a platform of civil society, as many of you may know, and it does work pretty effectively, getting together the officials, the well, less so businesses and trade unions, but they are at least formally present as well, and most so civil society institutions, which are quite active, which are quite cooperative, and at times quite pressive on how the politicians and authorities behave, what agenda they have. And now we would very much like to enter this experience into the new institutions that are to become from the negotiations of membership that we are to enter. And of course, all the experience you had, because again and again, 20 years ago, you were here, where we are now. So we need all these expertise and practical issues as well. I know from the Polish friends that you were very keen in preparing many negotiators on very different levels, not only top politicians, not only top officials, but combining the capacities of the state apparatus and civil society and think tanks, and actually being everywhere in Brussels and around. This is one of the lessons learned. I'm sure there are many, and I see this is a very important mutual task for the months and years to come. Of course, the war again and again makes its own agenda, and also combining the thanks for what is done already. It is also important to cooperate on quite concrete fields. For instance, combating Russian propaganda, which is very much used by populists throughout the region. Not naming the political forces, but we all know what we see, and it is vital to unite forces, to explain, to get to the audience, and to combat those things that Putin will be delighted to have in the region. Another field of very promising field of cooperation is actually the troubleshooting. What we had with the grain crisis, so-called, which could have been stopped at its very early stages of unfolding, but unfortunately it went too far. And even now, Putin will do its worst to continue it, if not grains, and something else. But speaking of analytical community, probably it's possible to see early warning signs and urge the governments to act while it's not too late. Also, speaking of different chapters and different institutional capabilities that will be opening as future continues, will be opening in the nearest months and years. I think all the cross-country, cross-border, region-to-region, city-to-city, organization-to-organization coalitions and common projects will also be very necessary, both until the war ends and especially after, because then too many things of recovery will be also very much necessary. Dear colleagues, I would not get you tired by long speeches, probably stop here. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, the process of negotiation we have experienced on our own body. It's quite a long process and a painful process. So I think that this is really from our side also a great possibility to cooperate, because we've been through it, and at the very beginning we thought that it might be a little bit easier, but finally we found ourselves in negotiating for years. and having to adapt all our legal framework to European law. So we will be very happy, of course, to share our experiences, but also I think that this is an opportunity to have a lot of common projects together also. And I don't know from the experience of our organizations, because as I said, maybe you were not here, but the organizations that we have in this project are usually organizations that deal with refugees, deal with migrants. A lot of them were established after the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. So maybe you could also address, maybe going a bit step down, organization like that, and think about possibilities of cooperation between civil society organization bottom down.
Well, this is a very important point as well, both in Ukraine and out of Ukraine, as that's also one field of gratitude, because you literally share your hospitality with millions of Ukrainians that had to leave the country. But now it's also a question of these horizontal ties, not alienate them, but make them in cooperation with your organizations, cooperation with Ukrainian organizations, keep them in this framework of the region at large, helping Ukrainian war efforts. Again, from gathering help to combating negative information attacks, to sharing information, all this is most necessary. It is probably easier to say what would not suffice. So this can also be done. Unfortunately, our government did make some moves to alienate some of the forced refugees, but hopefully this can be brought to terms when dust settles and new legislation comes into force, and these and people who had to leave the country will also feel that they are needed. They can have plans towards Ukraine and build those plans on how to cooperate here and now with Ukrainian organizations and, of course, organizations of your countries.
Can you, for instance, tell us some examples, like success stories? Do you know any success stories that we could share here, that you could share with us, of like successful cooperation between civil society organization of your countries and ours, like V4 or going broader?
Well, V4, it's actually the name for the example. We have, as many of you might know, the Visegrad 4 Foundation that actually is for years supporting projects, especially, by the way, in think tank sphere, to have common things in producing analysis, producing influence on political agenda and on societal agenda. Well, that was before the full-scale invasion mainly, and now it is more of humanitarian cooperation, which can be many. I think many of your colleagues are in this or that way or were involved in such a cooperation. So this can be the case, and as far as I understand, it can be the thing to rely on the EU support and funds in sharing experience, in having the things that, for instance, in Poland was UKIE, the government of European integration, that also relied, as far as I at least saw when we were visiting this, see how you did it, to see all those activities that we will have also to make, from legislation to media things. Again, you tell me. So at least on those three spheres, it can be done.
Yeah, if I may here have a personal comment, our president, Dr. Małgorzata Bonikowska, who is the president of our center, she was also director of UKIE, the Office for Integration
Yes.
of Poland into European Union, and we actually both had some role there, and it is a very interesting time because it was straight after the fall of communism, and actually we didn't have experts. We had like fresh blood of people who were enthusiastic and ready to learn. So it was like an experiment to have such people occupy very important positions that then resulted in Poland's, I don't know, accession also into European Union. So this is sorry for the personal comment, but when you are talking about UKIE, that does ring a bell. And now with the 20th
Precisely.
anniversary of Poland's joining
Yes.
the European Union, it is even more worthy to think about it, and to think about it also out of the box. That sometimes you don't need to have like a situation in a vacuum, a perfect situation, but with people who perhaps are not that prepared to do the task. They will do that because they are enthusiastic and they believe in that, and they have like resources. So I wish that Ukraine, also in a different situation, but I'm sure and I hope that you will deal with this preparation and process of negotiations very well. But I would like to ask you a question.
Yes.
From your perspective, what do you think is the most important for you now? Because sometimes we think that we know what you need, but what do you need?
There is a generalistic answer, which is workable and stable institutions. And to this, it's general words explaining that really need expertise and need institutions that will be functional in having, well, on the one hand, having negotiations. And that's why I mentioned Polish example on the one hand about those prepared specialists, both from the official sector and non-official sector. And second, everything that pertains in having the implementation on the level of the government, because however difficult might be the legislation stuff, but the criteria there are more or less understandable. You can benchmark some of the achievements through concrete statements within the laws and pass the post. But when it comes to real implementation, here the experience is mostly needed, and the experience that would rely on real life of the region, as we very much share political culture, very much share civil culture, more or less similar traditions of relations of civil society vis-a-vis the government. So all this would be a very fruitful field of cooperation.
Well, thank you. Yes, we are very, very, very eager to share this experience, and this is also what we have been doing. Thank you, Olesia, because I can see that you have just had some breaking news for us. And can I read that? Around half an hour ago in Slovakia, we have got breaking news. In the regional seats of Handlowa happened an assault on Prime Minister Fico. His life is not in danger, but wounds are serious. This might have effect on EU parliamentary elections, that's right, and on the attitude to EU and democracy in general here in Slovakia. I hope there is no international connection in this sad case. Yes, thanks, Olesia, for sharing it. Mr. Roslav, Mr. Gerashimuk, do you have any comments on that?
Well, we wish everyone well, and hopefully this is not serious, but also hopefully it will not have any effect that would be used by the Russians. We still, I saw it is used, but just as the one line. Let's say if you have any details, they might be very important.
Thank you, Oresha, for that. We will definitely follow the news and we'll try to get more informed later on. Okay, so our participants, would you like to use this opportunity to, I don't know, address a question to both our speakers? This is right now your last chance before the break. I do not see any hands up. So I would suggest that we take a break, like 10 minutes break right now. And let's meet at 4:10 here on our Zoom link. Our break has finished. Okay, it's nice to see you after the break. So please, Mr. Gerasimuk, if you could tell us your insights about the possibilities of cooperation and opportunities that are resulting from the Ukraine joining one day and in this moment instead of joining European Union.
Thank you very much. In my presentation, I would like to focus a bit on the activities which are already taken by the civil society organizations of the region, and by my organization in particular, by networking and by opportunities that we have on the way to the European Union and together with the European Union. And here I have to mention first and foremost that we, as a civil society actors, as civil society organizations, are in an advantageous position, since there is no border between civil society organizations, and we are already a sort of a community working in the region, in the European Union, and by having no borders, we are much closer to each other than the nation states, the member states, than the EU and the candidate countries. That's first and foremost, and that's very important because having this advantage, we can be the drivers of the cooperation, we can be the drivers of communication with the stakeholders, including the EU institutions, the national governments, and the governments of the candidate states. And we also are not only the advocates, but the watchdogs of the reforms, both in the EU countries, in the candidate countries. And what we are seeing now in Georgia, which failed to get the same impetus from the cooperation with the EU, is the example when civil society is objecting the national politics, which can bring the country into Russian hemisphere and sphere of influence. And therefore, let me here also take this opportunity to support the protests in Tbilisi right now, because the people there and civil society actors there try to prevent Georgia from falling out of the club of so-called associated trio, which now is sort of duo, because only Moldova and Ukraine stay on track, whereas Georgia fights to have this right to choose their European future. Let's switch into the region and into the regional efforts that can be taken to accelerate the process of European integration. Here it's very important to mention that usually for decades of cooperation between Ukraine and the countries of the EU, there was the division line between so-called Old Europe and New Europe. Old Europe quite often was very reluctant towards further enlargement, and the countries of the Central Europe, Central and Eastern Europe were much more in favor of the enlargement, and it was mostly the initiative of the countries of Central and Eastern Europe which was looking for the ways, for the opportunities to keep the countries of Eastern neighborhood engaged. And when the European Union has launched its European neighborhood policy, which was aimed at setting a belt of prosperity and security around the EU, the belt of countries which will be prosperous, democratic, and therefore wouldn't cause any problems to the European Union. Obviously, it was sort of unfair towards those countries who voiced publicly their desire to join the EU, but were put into the same basket with the countries which never expressed such a desire, like Morocco or other countries of North Africa. Therefore, with a great contribution of the Friends of Ukraine in the European Union, there was a sort of a backdoor to the EU integration, which was invented by the guys who are often called the godfathers of Eastern Partnership by current Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Radosław Sikorski, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden, Carl Bildt. They proposed this Eastern Partnership frame for those who were much more close to the European Union and much more close to the goals and values of European Union. Unfortunately, not all of the countries managed to benefit from the frame. Here I mean that it included Azerbaijan, Armenia, Belarus, Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine. And even in the case of Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine, the progress was obvious. Then in 3 other countries, there were some problems with that. First, Belarus, after another round of so-called elections when President Lukashenko again became a president, although the level of falsification was really high, it's clear that Belarus was excluded from the format. It was sustained, but here we have to put this division line between the state and civil society. And I bet that civil society activists who had to leave the country because of the repressions of Lukashenko and who registered their NGOs, think tanks, and other initiatives in Poland and Lithuania mostly, still play an important role in setting the agenda and keeping an eye on Belarus. And I hope one day Belarus will be back and will also have an opportunity to move towards the European Union where it belongs to. In the case of Azerbaijan, we also have some problems with democracy and the weakness of the civil society organizations and the think tanks. And but here I see clear correlation. When the state oppresses civil society, then the state fails to fulfill the criteria and to move forward the European Union, which on the one hand is beneficial for the leaders of such states, but brings a lot of harm to the citizens of this state or these states, and that is the case so far of Belarus and to less extent of Azerbaijan. In the case of Armenia, it's a different story because now we see an Armenian Zeitenwende, if I may call it this way, the change of mood, the change of spirit in the country, and the strong desire of Prime Minister Pashinyan to move back into the European integration process. In the case of Georgia, we see that moment of hesitation, that moment of bifurcation, I would even say, because if the new legislation is imposed, it will definitely put Georgia on the Azerbaijani track, or even worse, because in the case of Azerbaijan, there is at least some sovereignty whereas in Georgia, they will be totally subordinated to the Russian authorities due to the position of the Georgian shadow leader. Now, talking about Moldova and Ukraine. Now that's a great window of opportunity for further cooperation. And within this further cooperation, there are both opportunities and obstacles. Because at the very beginning of the story, I told that the countries that were reluctant to ensure the EU enlargement were the countries of the old Europe, so-called old Europe, whereas our neighbors were strongly in favor. But nowadays, the situation is a little bit different, bearing in mind the position of some states of the region. First and foremost, unfortunately, I have to name Hungary, which for a number of times stressed that it wants many concessions from Ukraine in terms of our legislation on ethnic minorities, on languages, although most of the amendments to the legislation were in line with the Venice Commission recommendations, and that was recognized by the EU. However, we definitely see that Prime Minister Orban is playing his game and bargains with global actors and with the EU actors, using the pretext of Russian war against Ukraine as one of his arguments for putting the obstacles on the way of Kiev to the EU. Then we regrettably have to abstain from the Hungarian government in our expectations. But there is a lot that we can do apart from cooperation with Hungary and apart from cooperation with the Hungarian actors. And here there are some efforts that are already being in place, including those implemented with the participation of my organization. First thing that I believe is really important is cherishing the common identity of the region, and cherishing the common identity of the region of Central and Eastern Europe with Ukraine included into it. That's the main idea behind our annual Ukrainian Central European Forum, which assembles the countries of the region together for the discussion of the current situation, most burning challenges, greatest opportunities, and so on. This event was hosted twice in Lviv due to the security situation and due to the logistical limitations, and both last year and in 2022, despite of the all security threats, we had more than 100 persons on spot, physically, not online. And I believe that expresses the great interest of the participants towards cooperation in the region. And we had the participants from all Visegrad countries. We had the participants from Romania and the Republic of Moldova. We had the participants from Lithuania. Besides, we also had the participants from the UK, from Qatar, from Hong Kong, which means that the interest toward the region is great, and the region may eventually become the place for great developments and great investments if the path of Moldova and the Ukraine to the European Union is a success. Within the discussions at the Ukrainian Central European Forum, we came to the conclusion that the expansion of the format is desperately needed. And we have done a few more efforts in this regard. We also launched the Ukrainian Central European Forum Youth Edition. And this year we had the pilot of such forum. The Youth-oriented Ukrainian Central European Forum assembles young leaders and young experts, early career scholars. And that is really important because it will be them who will decide on the future of relations within the EU, on the reforms of the EU, on the Ukraine's role within the EU. And while we have rather strong ties here in this civil society segment, it's our task to bring the same ties, to cherish the same ties for the younger generation. Because the younger generations of both experts, young scholars, NGO activists, is sort of deprived, in particular in the Ukrainian case. Because while I was an early career expert 20 years ago, I had a great opportunity to travel around the EU to build my network, to enrich the networks of civil society organizations. Many of the young scholars now are deprived from this opportunity, first because of the COVID pandemic, then because of the war, Russian war against Ukraine. And I think that it's our task, the task of the established NGOs, the task of the established think tanks, to share our context, to share our networks, and to give this opportunity to the younger generation to be together, to remember that there are no ties, there are no borders between the civil society organizations, and to develop their connections in order to solve the problems in the future. Another thing that is quite important and which was already mentioned by the previous speakers is the issue of security. And indeed, security matters. And what Ukraine is doing now is tremendous in terms of deterring Russian pressure. But we have to keep in mind that it's not only the Ukrainian perspective, it's the perspective of the region that we have to deter Russia. And for this task, we have to use already established ties, networks, not only within the civil society organizations, but also interstate initiatives and organizations. Here, I would stress that there is a necessity to reinvent Visegrad Plus cooperations. This cooperation, which includes not only V4 countries, but also other states, is sort of stalled because of the Hungarian position. But we can think of the new opportunities and new ways to reestablish it and to find the topics which will have some common denominators for all the interested parties, not only V4 countries, but also plus countries, including Ukraine. Also, it is quite important to keep an eye on the developments within the 3Cs initiatives. The initiative that was launched by Poland and Croatia, but now assembles all the countries of the region, starting from Balkan states and finishing with the Baltic states. The initiative, which was first established as the group of countries interested in digitalization of the region, in economic cooperation within the region, and in logistical cooperation within the region, nowadays has an opportunity to play a crucial role in security developments as well. And already for a couple of years, there is a discussion that the logistical ties established between the 3Cs initiative for the countries can be used for military purposes as well. And that is even more important, bearing in mind that most of the 3Cs initiative countries also belong to so-called Bucharest 9 group, which is a group of the NATO Eastern Flank countries, Baltic states, Visegrad 4, plus Romania and Bulgaria. Ukraine is interested in cooperation with both B9 and 3Cs initiatives, and Ukraine is definitely interested in setting and installing more logistical ties, which are important for the delivery of assistance to Ukraine, for the delivery of Ukrainian goods abroad, and for military cooperation as well, because sooner or later Ukraine will be integrated into the European security community. And having this cooperation in the region will be an asset and may have a spillover effect and may result in further incorporation of Ukraine into the European security system, which has some risks for Europe, because at the moment Ukraine is in war, the country in war, but which also has some benefits, because Ukraine is the most experienced country in having this war with the existential enemy in the northeast. What is also important, and here the role of Central and Eastern European countries can be tremendous, is the necessity to outreach the countries of the global South. There's a completely new trend, but whether we want it or not, we have to accept the countries of global South, whatever we mean by that, Latin America and Caribbean, Africa, South Asia, or Gulf states. They play an important role in building a new system of international relations, which was absolutely shocked by the Russian Federation, and nowadays definitely needs some updates. In outreaching these regions, Ukraine can rely on the countries of Central and Eastern Europe first and foremost, and the reason for that is obvious. If we try to outreach Global South with the participation of our usual partners, the UK, the United States, France, Germany, whatever, then it can be very tricky, because the countries that used to be colonized by the old Europe and the United States, were under the influence of the United States, might be reluctant towards accepting the new realities and towards supporting Ukraine if such a support is advocated by the countries who have negative image. But none of the Central European countries ever had this colonial past. So they are perceived in a very good way, and in both Africa, Latin America, and Southeast. And probably together with the Nordic countries, which also do not have such a record of colonial powers, and Central European countries, we definitely can outreach Global South, not only for the sake of supporting Ukraine, but also for the sake of promoting the EU and explaining that the EU is not just the group of colonial powers, that the EU as a completely new project which was created and launched for stressing the necessity of peace and values, and that can be our common task. Beside, it is also important to remember the historical background, and here I would refer to two concepts by two great persons from the region of Central and Eastern Europe, Milan Kundera and Jerzy Giedroyc. In case of Giedroyc, we should remember that actually he was the one who promoted this Jagiellonian school of thought, and who was one of the trendsetters in establishing strong Polish advocacy for Ukraine. And in case of Milan Kundera, we should remember his iconic essay, The Tragedy of Eastern Europe, and to learn the lessons described in that essay and to avoid a new tragedy of Eastern Europe. Last but not least, what I wanted to mention in my presentation is the fact that while we are discussing the new opportunities for the EU and for the countries that aim to join the EU, we should also remember about the necessity to reform the EU. And the EU reform should definitely be designed in a way that will help to enlarge and to absorb new members, and to ensure fair dissemination of votes within the EU, And here I believe that cooperation between Ukraine and Central European states can be another opportunity, because in the formats like Weimar Triangle, which brings together Warsaw, Paris, and Berlin, the voice of Warsaw can be stronger if Warsaw comes with advocating not only its interests, but also the interests of Central and Eastern Europe as an entity with a common identity, common goals, and common values. And I do believe that one day we will reach these results. Here, let me stop, and I would be grateful for any comments, questions, which I can address. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I would like to ask you about some other actor, because we've been talking a lot about countries from our region, but what about China? Is there any attitude? What is your position towards this actor, which is quite powerful, especially in the Balkans, trying to be powerful in our region? Right now, perhaps there is not the best situation for us to think about China as a partner, although it is like still, although it's a strategic competitor, but our trade partner, it remains. So how do you picture this actor? And to what extent do you think you would be able and eager to cooperate with it?
It's a great question, because that's the question which is often asked in the recent days after the visit of the Chinese President Xi Jinping to Paris, Belgrade, and Budapest. And here I would say that the turning point was February 2022. Up until that moment, China was quite positively perceived by many European member states. And I omitted another initiative which assembled many countries of the region together. That's so-called 16+1 initiative. The initiative which included Balkan states, V4 states, Baltic states, and Romania and Bulgaria. And the initiative was developing pretty fast, and the investments that China has put into the initiative were a bit higher than what was done by the member states of the Three Seas initiative. If we compare the Three Seas initiative fund and the Sino-CEE fund, which was established for financing the project by China in the region, then it was $1 billion from Three Seas initiative fund versus $10 billion provided by China. However, first the COVID-19 pandemic and the respective crisis, and further the Chinese pro-Russian neutrality in the Russian war against Ukraine created serious image challenges for the Chinese People's Republic. And many countries that willingly cooperated with China before 2022 now rather abstain from such cooperation. And that is clear if we take a look at this 16+1 initiative, which turned into 14+1 initiative recently. Because while Greece has joined the initiative, the Baltic states already announced that they withdraw. I mean, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Lithuania was the first to leave because of that Taiwan issue tensions, and then Estonia and Latvia just followed. Nowadays, there is a discussion in Czech Republic regarding leaving the initiative. So what I mean here is that first, it didn't really matter who to cooperate with in order to develop the region. And there are still projects that are on the table, including the Belgrade-Budapest train connection, which is financed by China. But there are also the examples when the countries are much more reluctant in cooperating with China and accepting Chinese investments because of the security concerns. And here I would mention Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, which was established to finance the projects in the region, and which has Poland, Romania, Hungary as members and participants. And in the case of Poland, it was expected that the bank will finance the hub airport near Warsaw. But there are no news about it starting from 2019. And I guess there are going to be no news in particular after the events of 2022. In the case of Romania, China was also willing to invest into the nuclear power plants, including the Chornovoda power plant. However, again, because of the security concerns, Romania withdrew from the project. And now the winner is the winner is the Westinghouse with its proposals to set this new types of reactors. Therefore, summarizing it, I would say that China has a share in European politics, just because of the fact that for many years, many countries were willing to cooperate for the sake of investments. But first, Corona crisis and Chinese so-called wolf warrior diplomacy in that time has undermined its positions in the minds of the Europeans. Afterwards, the Chinese position in the Russian war against Ukraine has raised the security concerns. And here I would put a full stop, if not a new circumstance. And this new circumstance is uncertainty in transatlantic relations. And what I mean here is that nobody is sure who's going to become the new president of the United States, and nobody is sure how he or she will build the new American policy toward the region. And if the Americans go isolationist again, as they did several times in their history, then for the EU, in particular for the leading countries, France and Germany, Chinese market will really matter. And we could see it from the results of visit of Xi Jinping to France, that indeed, despite all the security concerns, huge projects were signed, including Airbus cooperation. And thus, I would say that although the perception of China has changed a lot, its role is still to be defined after both the elections to the European Parliament and rotations in the European Commissions, and certainly after the elections in the United States.
So what scenarios, if I may ask, do you see? Because all of our countries ask for scenarios for our own sake. But what scenario do you see? What scenarios do you see in case Donald Trump wins or loses the elections?
Thanks for this question, because it provides me with the opportunity for another self-advertising. In January this year, we just finished a project which is called Trends and Scenarios for 2024. The project was supported by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and in that project we tried to to define the key trends in the global affairs and to build scenarios on that. And when talking about China, And the project was built on both brainstorming and interviews and focus group with the experts on China. It became more or less clear for us that we should not expect any further escalations from China up until 2030. And the key argument here is the economic argument. The Chinese economy suffered from the pandemic, and therefore the burden of war with Taiwan is not something that is acceptable for China in the coming 3 to 5 years. So at the moment, we will see probably cautious position of China and its attempts to develop the economics to make sure that they are ready to make any decisions, notwithstanding the economic considerations. So we have this 4 years for sure that China will try to sit on two chairs simultaneously, trying to undermine the American hegemony in the world on the one hand, but keeping ties with the European Union and not to be isolated either. So that's the basic scenario that we have to keep in mind. But if the Chinese authorities decide to go closer in relations with Russia by crossing the red lines which were set by both the EU and the United States, if China provides weapons to Russia, then most probably it will result in further escalation and breaking ties between the EU and China, which will be mutually painful for these actors, because on the one hand, China needs European market. On the other hand, Europe also needs Chinese capacities, in particular the capacities necessary for the green transition, because nowadays China is much more developed in terms of building batteries and building the equipment necessary for the green transition. And besides, China is the owner of technologies for the exploration and proceeding with the rare earth materials, which are also necessary for the green transition. Thus, I would say that in the coming 3 to 5 years, we will be in the situation when the system, the international system, would be so-called orbitally stable. There will be fluctuations, but within a certain orbit. But when we reach this 2030 margin, then we can expect reuse, which can be both good and bad. And a lot depends on how prepared we will be for the changes in the international system by that year.
We have a question from one of our participants. Yasha is asking, and now I will quote, "I would like to ask one more thing about China. Russia tried to build a good relationship with China. Do you think it is possible for them to be equally partners, or does Russia still just fall under China influence?"
I don't really think that there is any chance for any country to be equal partner with China just because of the Chinese political thought, which actually doesn't give any chance for a strategic partnership. Not a single country is perceived as a strategic partner by China, and China either stays alone or dominates its satellites. And in the case of Russia, I don't think that any closer cooperation between Russia and China will result in equal partnership. Look, it's Putin who is coming to Xi, not Xi who is coming to Putin after negotiations in Europe.
But at the same time, do you think that there is coming back to the business as usual if China wants it? And I'm talking about our countries right now, Western, Central, and Ukraine.
There was another project that we had back in 2021, and that
Another
project,
opportunity for you to promote yourself. That wasn't planned.
yeah, but thank you for this opportunity. I hope it's for free. The project resulted in the policy report called Pax Americana versus Pax Sinica. And in that project, we tried to study what kinds of menus Beijing and Washington propose to the audience here in Europe. And the key finding was that whereas China was providing cheap loans without any political conditionality and access to cheap high-tech technologies, including 5G, the United States were first and foremost focused on security issues and providing security guarantees under NATO umbrella and stuff like that. But if you take a look at these two menus, a lot depends on your appetite. And here, with the assistance of Russian Federation, paradoxically, the appetite for security has grown instead of the appetite for loans, investments, and stuff like that. And in this regard, it's getting clear that the US is in priority for most countries of the region, and for Germany as well. France, with the idea of the strategic autonomy, is sort of outsider from the club. However, the position remains uncertain and depends a lot on the personality of the president. So, yes, indeed, security issues prevail. And back to your question, is there any chance for business as usual? No, unless security will prevail. And security will prevail until Russia is a threat to Europe. And Russia is a threat to Europe as long as it remains nuclear authoritarian state.
Is there anybody who would like to know, I don't know, comment or ask a question? Olesia, perhaps you would like to write something in chat if you can't speak. And please remember that this is a rare opportunity to address Mr. Gerashimuk, because yes, he's with us and ready to answer our questions. Olesia is writing something. Well, she needs some time. Well, so if nobody wants to ask anything from their side, I would like to ask you maybe, Mr. Gerashimuk, how do you feel Polish and Ukrainian relations? Because they are at the same time good and bad. So this is a little bit schizophrenic, but maybe you would like to comment on my provocative thought?
Yes, indeed, there is this ambivalence in Ukrainian-Polish relations, and we unfortunately moved away from that high point in friendly relations, which we reached back in 2022, when the support of Poland was enormous and the gratitude of Ukraine was also very high. Here, I would say that nowadays we are again facing two menus which we have to select from. One is the economic one, and the second one is the security one. And indeed, in the case of economic relations, there are some tensions, and these tensions are mainly rooted in the fact that both countries want to support their farmers, both countries want to support their voters, and that's the matter of tensions. But if we take a look at the security menu, then I would say that it's a clear common denominator, and both Poland and Ukraine have a very good understanding who the true enemy is. And we are all aware probably of the situation in Poland and of the tensions between the President Duda and Prime Minister Tusk. But when they talk to the Americans, they both support Ukraine and they both support provision of more weapons and military assistance to Ukraine. And while President Tusk was talking to the Democratic administration, President Duda was talking to Donald Trump with the same messages about the necessity to support Ukraine. And I guess that the common enemy keeps us together, and also cultural language similarities also make us very similar in understanding, because that gives us the context which is common for both countries. And you may probably ask me what will happen if we do not have a common enemy. Then probably we'll switch into more pragmatic relations indeed, but without a common enemy and his interference, I think that pragmatic relations will be much more easier to set, and by being at the same community of European states will give us much more opportunities for common understanding.
I would only like to remind you that before having this common enemy, we were the strongest supporters of the accession of Ukraine into European Union. And that was like our state's, I don't know, Bogusław Geremek was the initiator of the idea. And this is something that Poland has been always a strong supporter. So this is not only the question of having a common enemy, although yes, having common enemy helps, and I only hope that the security will win over economy in this situation.
We have this common enemy for hundreds of years. We have to remember that.
Sometimes it was a bit dormant. We didn't understand that it is really powerful. We have a question from one of our participants. So if I may read it to you, what do you think about scenario when the EU Parliament will move more populist, either right or left, compared to current situation? Sorry, I just skipped. Yes, I will continue reading, but some other people are trying to ask questions and I lost. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it. So once again, what do you think about scenario when EU Parliament will move more populist, either right or left, compared to current situation? Imagine EU Parliament with Slovak MPs from SNS, Republika, a kind of zdor. And that more question. V4 group is pretty divided in context of priorities of current government. What can prevent it of becoming a one more paper organization, for instance, like Guam?
So I will respond to this question and to the next one really briefly. Unfortunately, in 8 minutes, I will also have to leave you. But speaking about the new European Parliament, first and foremost, the current trend is that Renew Social Democrats and EPP will still hold the majority, although that would be maybe less strong majority. But I think that the rise of populist parties, right-wing or left-wing, has become a wake-up call for the mainstream parties, and the cooperation will be stronger. Plus, if we compare the positions of ECR and ID, then we see that ECR is much more pro-Ukrainian and still pro-European in comparison to Le Pen and her group. So I think that even those who are extreme populists like SNS guys, they can be contained within the ECR by more moderate forces like Melanie, who turned to be much more moderate in comparison to what was expected from her. In the case of V4 countries, unfortunately, unless the position of the Hungarian government changes and unless Budapest will put these obstacles on the development of the initiatives, I do not think any new developments. Indeed, for V4, the chance was to become one of the promoters of the enlargement and the engine for the enlargement. But the lack of this cohesion and the lack of goal after the accession altogether that brought the group into crisis. But there is a certain flexibility within the group, and I think that, as I told, reinventing V4 plus format can be of added value if it happens, and if the common denominators are found by the member states. So yes, there are a lot of challenges, but I think that there is also a lot of mobilization by the mainstream political forces, and that can give us a clue to resolving these issues.
Great,
And
thank you for that. Yeah, we have another question. So if you could have a look at it and I will read it aloud. Let's look to the problem of Ukraine, integration from other side. Let's imagine that the first enemy of the EU, not Russia, of course, she is, but America. Its aim to lure our European business and put Europe on the American energy needle. How in this case, what impact will Ukraine's integration into EU have? So now we are not trusting America. The scenario is that America is somebody who is going to, in a way, deceive us. And how do we position, how do Ukraine positions itself in this puzzle?
I think that there is still a discussion among different groups, which is not that loud at the moment. It's the group of transatlanticists, that's a group of Germanophiles, that a group of Polonophiles, that a group of Francophiles since recently. But if we're sticking to this very issue of energy needle, then most probably the progress that is being done by the EU into switching into the alternative energy sources will give it an opportunity to develop further, notwithstanding the dependencies on the energy sources. And I think that the lessons learned by Russian domination on the energy market will prevent Europe from letting anybody else to have such a domination. And of course, it's not a cheap process, and it takes a while, but the EU is doing quite well on this path, and I think Ukraine should join the EU in this regard, because what we have right now is the energy infrastructure, which is very vulnerable, but all those efforts of Russia to destroy it let us understand that we need the reform and we need switching to the alternative sources as well. Thank you. And unfortunately, I guess here I have to stop, because in 4 minutes I will have I have to comment on the Slovak situation on radio. So excuse me, please, for leaving you a bit earlier than I was expecting.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, for sharing your insights.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on
Uh,
board, and good luck with your project.
Thank you. Olesia, so what do we do right now? Is this session was organized by our partner from Slovak, Ukrainian House Zilna. So I am just here because Olesia lost her voice. I'm not really sure what is going to happen next. So Olesia, if you can tell us or else write us the remaining part of the. Okay, so from what I understand, we are finishing our session right now. Sorry for finishing it earlier. For some people, it might be a good news. And we will meet you. Olesia, please, could you confirm us what is the next meeting when we are going to meet? Yes. So that was the 7th session, and this is actually our sessions are going to the end. Thank you for all who managed to participate in the majority of our meetings. I hope that they have been useful, and I do hope to meet you. Yes, Alessia is writing, but I'll finish my thought. I hope that I will meet some of you in Warsaw in September. Prior to that, we are going also to organize 2 sessions open to the wild audience, but you will be also requested or invited to participate. So in May, we will finish the selection, the series of our skill building sessions. And I'm really very happy to see that I've seen so many faces, regular faces on the regular basis that were interested in what we were going to tell you. So that this is really very empowering and moving. And now, yes, Alessia, what is she telling me? So the next session that was programmed in 1 week's time probably will be postponed on 29th of May, which is a week later. So we will send you an update of the agenda. Thank you, Olesia, for organizing all that. Thank you for participating in our session, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time for our last skill building session, but it does not mean that our project is going to end that soon. Thank you very much, and bye.
Bye-bye.